Right,
So we just need to turn mics on.
great. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay, I guess we call the meeting in order.
Sure.
And, thanks for coming, all of you. I got kind of a draft agenda from Jeremy a couple of days ago, and I asked him to add the first item. And, just, like I said, it's not something we've worked on in this committee, but it's something I think that impacts a lot of what we do here. And this went well. I know you've been busy, but this whole process of getting those put together and then getting them on the ballot, and they passed with flying colors. And so I guess I'd like to hear a little
Sure.
more about it. First of all, congratulations on all that work and getting
Sure.
through the process.
Yeah, I thought it went great. I mean, all of the ordinances passed overwhelmingly. I think the marijuana cultivation was the one that wasn't as,
One of them only got 60-something% of the vote.
right,
The rest of
right,
them-
as opposed to 80 or 90%. I think that's, and to me, I mean, this is my first real full year of doing ordinance work and development in town, and I thought it went very well. I thought it was a deliberative process, and the planning board spent a lot of time on things. And that's good, and the select board did a lot. And I thank them for their support for, moving some of these things along. I guess.
Any interest that's in the community about actually starting up some of that, or is that?
Well, let's start, I can start through just on the agenda. So the marijuana cultivation facilities, for those people that did not read the ordinance draft, what that does is would allow Tier 1 and Tier 2 marijuana cultivation facilities as defined by the state and in our ordinance. And those are the smallest tiers, so that's up to 2,000 square feet of canopy is the Tier 2. Once that process, that ordinance got approved, now what I need to do is I need to start drafting a licensing ordinance that we'll take to a special town meeting at some point. And where the town would actually regulate, like business license, like we do business licenses, like liquor establishments or victualers or lodging facilities, where there's an annual license, and so that the police department, life safety folks, code officer, and the public can come and express concerns about application or an annual renewal or an initial application.
Let me ask a question about
Yes.
that. One thing that's come up in one of the other meetings I attend, the energy meeting, where we're working really hard to lower our energy consumption, and for the Global Covenant of Mayors, and really work on that. One of the things that's come up in that discussion is that particularly indoor cultivation is extremely energy, it takes an incredible amount of energy. And one of the questions they had, is there any place to have people in the licensing process talk about where they're going to get the energy, what kind of energy conservation methods they'll be using in these situations?
Yeah, I mean, I get that, and I looked at it really hard initially when this subject came up. I mean, I looked into it quite a bit. What I didn't want to do in the zoning ordinance is do it in the zoning ordinance, and then you really start. We don't regulate any other
Right.
business in that way, looking at the type of energy consumption. So I didn't think it was fair or appropriate to look at it from that perspective, but I could see doing something in the business licensing piece. I did mention, I thought to the energy folks that I would at least look at, we did this in Bangor once where someone wanted us to include low-impact development, like best management practices for stormwater, make that a requirement. And some of the city councilors up there were hesitant about it, even though everyone knows it's like the right thing to do. But so we added to applications, like the actual applications that someone submits, some questions on have they looked at low impact development, type of infrastructure improvements. I mean, I think there's room for that on this, but, and we can talk more about it. I think on the business licensing piece, it seems to maybe make more sense than on the zoning piece, because I
Well,
really
I
hate
know
to.
that energy, they're particularly concerned about that because the indoor growing is so energy, it takes so much energy. But they're also interested in any other business that come to town. Just a discussion about, as we move to reduce our energy usage, if we attract a lot of people that, use lots of energy, we can turn our whole goal around. And at no fault of anybody, it's just the way things work, and
Yeah.
I just want to look at the big picture, so, go.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, and I think, I have yet to digest, since I was on vacation last week, Dana Dow's bill that got approved, the renewable energy bill. So I don't have full grasp on all of that yet. But I think there's a lot we can do, and I think communities are now going to be able to pool a lot more resources together as part of that. So it's just not you're able to look at a larger pool of people to go in on a community solar farm, for instance. So I think if there's ways we can do things like that, or incentivize people to participate in that as part of a business licensing, that may be a way to go.
That would be a great way to go. Yeah, just curious, just
Yeah.
wanted to.
So I am working on that, so over the next, I pretty much have that done, honestly. The marijuana cultivation licensing ordinance, I got a few kinks to work out, but then I'm gonna bring that to the select board to review. And formula-based food, that, planning board spent a long time on that one, and that was the prohibition on what we've defined as formula-based food restaurants from in our downtown. And just to allow them in the B2 zoning district. That passed overwhelmingly in town. I wasn't surprised necessarily at it, but I thought it was a good vote and a good show of what matters to this community, and local businesses and the downtown core is significantly important. So those are good things.
Do you think that's going to result in any interest? I guess that's kind of what I'm curious about.
We should make sure the microphones are circled. So I was
Yep.
watching some online stuff the other day, and they're,
Hand me that one.
they,
I'm gonna keep two in front of me.
you're the person we really need to hear
Right.
from, so.
Well, the Institute for Self-Reliance was interested in this way back when I first drafted it, and they're kind of a neat organization that helps communities, small town communities and small local mom and pop businesses and groups try to thrive in this global economy that we live in, where they're competing against, companies from away. So they were interested in it. I have not heard from anyone yet, any businesses looking to come here.
Okay, that was-
But I have not heard that. Restaurant, food service, and hotels in the village district, that overwhelmingly passed. And that enables, right now, we have Camden Harbor Inn, their restaurant in the village zone, and then we have had one. They have not opened it up yet. It's still grandfathered. They're going to lose it at some point at the Whitehall, but it's no longer grandfathered. So they would now, if they do miss this 2 years for the Whitehall, they'll have to come back and go through the zoning board of appeals process to serve food to the public, much like the Norumbega will do.
Now, they did have, I know Cafe Miranda did some food service with them. Does a one-off count, or does it, they have to have a?
No, they need to have an actual Vitzler's license in their name.
Got it.
They can't, what's happening is Cafe Miranda's catering
Got
their
it.
events.
Okay.
And it doesn't make it a restaurant. Cafe Miranda's the restaurant, the licensed
Got it.
establishment, so. But I have heard the Norumbega is excited about this, and I think they're gonna be moving forward pretty quickly to bring an application to the zoning board of appeals. To me, and I looked back at work plans that we had developed, right, with the select board, or things that were on the list. One of the things was High Street, identify highest and best use of historic buildings on High Street. That was on our work plan. And just knowing the history here and reading some of the newspaper articles and what have you, and talking to folks about what happened on High Street in years past. And the Windward House, I think, they were trying to do some food service, and it was a real struggle for them, and it never went anywhere. I think this vote shows that there's maybe a change happening in Camden, that people are open to, more receptive to other options and other opportunities zoning-wise. So I think it's a good first step, especially if nothing, it gets approved and it goes through the whole process, gets approved, and then there are no negative impacts or really, I think that bodes well for looking at the rest of, not just Route 1 or, High Street, but, reuse of old buildings. It's hard to maintain and operate and afford these old, big buildings as single-family homes. And I know, there are a lot of people concerned about that can change neighborhoods drastically. It doesn't have to. And so I'm eager to see what happens with the Norumbega as they move forward with their process. And then I included another one on here, food sovereignty. And I didn't include the Clean Communities Ordinance and, some of the other things, but this one was one I think that has always been focused on incubator, small, either farm or food producers that are trying to figure out whether they really want to jump into the market, the commercial market, and they start at their home, and then eventually it takes off, and they want to be able to sell outside of the town that the food sovereignty allows you to. So I see that as a economic development and a business ordinance, really. I don't know if everyone knows what that does, but it allows me to, or any of you who live here in Camden, to open up you still need a use permit from the code office, but it allows you to not have to get a food license from the state if you're going to prepare food. However, there is some caveat there. There's no seafood, no chicken, and no poultry, and no meat. But that said, you could bake cakes, you could do all of that out of your home kitchen and sell it to your neighbor, or sell it to other people in town.
Jams or syrups or
Exactly.
whatever.
Yeah, pickles.
Yeah.
Curious, at what point, as they grow, at what point then do they need to do more licensing?
Well, the food sovereignty law only allows you to sell in the municipality that you are in, and you can't retail it. I mean, you can't wholesale it to a retailer.
You can't provide that to French and Braun to then resell it.
You cannot.
sell it
That's-
yourself, and that's it.
Correct. That's not allowed under state law, nor under our ordinance. So, I mean, I envision someone that's starting to, really, people are asking for their product more and more.
Right, then they discovered there is a business here, so
Correct.
then it's the time to, and like you said, it allows them to incubate and find out if they have a business.
Yes, exactly.
I remember, kind of relating to that, maybe a few years ago, High Mountain Hall has a commercial kitchen. Does that do anything for them in terms of making more full utilization, or is this a separate subject?
It doesn't really, I mean, it does, it's a kind of a separate subject, but I could envision someone using that kitchen that is right now in a certain location, because they can go over there and get licensed because it is a full commercial kitchen.
Yes.
Like if I'm doing it out of my house right now, I don't have a commercial kitchen, the state would come in and say, you can't make that for retail outside of, except for the food sovereignty piece. I could never use my kitchen to do that, to make that product. So I could then, once my product starts taking off, people want it, I could go to someone like High Mountain Hall that have a commercial kitchen, rent that space.
Yeah.
Then I can get licensed there, and then sell it, not only in Camden, but elsewhere. So I think those are good things. And I was surprised, not so much surprised, but glad to see how the votes went, and just, it was a strong indication to me that what the planning board did, what I have been doing, and the select board did for the last year was good.
Worth, time well spent.
It was.
And a strong endorsement from the select board and the planning board to take
Yeah.
it forward. And, I mean,
Yeah.
I was very.
It wasn't easy. I mean, the formula-based food, that was a tough one. That was trying to define what that was, what a formula-based restaurant was. It took a long time, but,
Yep.
everyone, we hashed it out, and I think it was a good thing, and I think the community really showed
Yeah,
that they
having-
supported it.
Sat through almost all the planning board meetings that Jeremy talked about. these went through multi-revisions that he did, and without Jeremy as part of it, these ordinances would not be where they were. You know, having
that's-
his expertise has really made the difference.
Exactly,
And allowed
that's-
us, we now have sort of a professional way to move forward with new ordinances that we did not have before. So thank you for that.
You had the staff to do it with.
No, it's good, and
That's a good thing.
my vacation that came just like a week after the town meeting was perfect, because now it's like, I was talking to Audra today, it's like, all right, November's coming right up. You know, so it's like, I gotta get right back into some other ones. So, town meeting form of government, there is no rest sometimes. It just keeps going, but, it's good. I'll make a,
Congratulations on doing all that.
yeah, but I'll make it, my annual vacation for sure, right after town meeting. All right, so let's, I'm gonna keep notes, because what I need to do is, we gotta somehow keep some better minutes of these meetings. Now that they're recorded, it's a lot easier to, go back and recreate them, but, second thing on the agenda was tannery update. I know the last time we met, we sat around and had quite the meeting on the tannery RFP. I thought it was good. I mean, it clearly shows that there are people in this community that are passionate about what they want to see at the tannery site. Right or wrong, you know, we're a diverse community and we need to look at all options. And I think Cedac's recommendations from to that perspective, as well as the select board, that we need to keep an RFP open, proves that. And so we're going to do that. That said, I don't know if everyone knew, but we've kind of put things on hold for a little bit so that we can assess. There's some concern about the bank of the river, whether or not that was, well, the DEP has defined it as solid waste. When you go through some of the assessments, it's pretty clear that that there may be some data gaps in that area. And, you know, I understand we're gonna retain the 75-foot wide piece for sure. Like, that's ours forever. It's 0.57 acres or 0.77 acres, is ours forever. That said, you know, water and geology and hydrogeology, they don't care about property lines. And I want to make sure that our piece, our risks are minimized and our liabilities are addressed, as are risks and liabilities associated with a redevelopment parcel. And I understand that we have the brownfield cleanup grant. We're going to use that to cap it. But we need to really make sure that our liabilities are addressed. Any developer that's going to come in, it's going to make sure too, you know, any good developer. I will say, I had a consultant review all the assessments, prior assessments, and look at it, and he found data gaps in those assessments. Now, if a developer comes in, a developer is going to have a consultant looking at it too. Likely, they would find some data gaps as well. So what we want to do now is just make sure that we take care of those gaps, find if we have some outstanding issues, we address them now, and then do that as part of a development, as well as the cleanup cap. Now, I will say one plus to this is that we were, I think, originally thinking we were going to, and there's a lot to look at, but we were originally thinking that the Riverwalk portion was going to kind of stay as this Riverwalk portion as it is, and use the cap money or the cleanup money on the cap on the development site. What I'm now kind of envisioning, we don't know until we get in there and do a little more assessment, but it's very possible that we may be able to take the funds, use most of the funds over on the bank area. If we do find contamination over there, that's equivalent to the contamination on the other side of, you know, the Riverwalk Trail. So it may be possible that we use the majority of the funds to address that bank area, and then a developer or us can use other funds to do the development site. So I'm hopeful. We've got a consultant coming in. We're meeting with them on this Friday. And then we're walking the site with Steve Dyer from Ransom as well. So Ransom is involved in the assessment, looking at this, is in addition to the consultant, Siler Services Incorporated, who's looking at that stuff for us.
Do you have a timeline?
Well, we're meeting on Friday, we'll be on the site on Friday too. And I don't have a timeline off the top of my head, but I assume by next Friday I'll have a good idea on timeline. Or this Friday, I'll have a good idea on timeline. Remember, the cleanup has to be done by September of 2021. So I don't want to take forever, but we have a little bit of time.
So the RFP then is kind of back burner until all this is set up?
It's really on the back burner until we just, not until it's addressed, but just until we get this other consultant on board and we sit down with Ransom a little more and brainstorm on how best to move it forward. It may be that the consultants, both of them say to me, move forward with the RFP right now. But not being an environmental consultant, not being the one that is gonna manage I'm trying to manage our risk, that's why I'm bringing these other folks in. But they'll give us guidance on that. And they have plenty of experience dealing with contaminated sites and risks and liabilities.
So the RFP, it's on hold for now. The next step in that process, though, is to take it to the select board, the RFP. So it's barring some changes that may come about with this, the RFP is ready to go to the select board.
Yeah, for the most part,
Okay.
yeah. I did tweak some things, addressing some concerns from the public that when they were in, at our last meeting, I did tweak some wording, and just to address some of their concerns. And they should be addressed, in my opinion. I mean, I think sometimes, people, when they're very passionate about something, they want it their way. And sometimes when it comes to this stuff, you can't have it all. So I think we all should try to come from that perspective sometimes, and realize that there's lots of compromise here. And I think we can get a development there, green space, and the farmer's market can all live happily ever after and thrive together. So that's that. And fiber, I wanted to just touch base on that. Robin Robin sent me an email.
Did everybody get that email from Robin? Or was that just?
Did they? Okay.
I thought so, yeah.
And I can just read it here. Fiber, I'd love to see us all pull together. I'm happy to work on this when I get home, and that made me so happy. When she said that, a regional meeting of local towns to update where we all are at and what each town is thinking about future development for broadband. I think we should do this before we invite speakers, and we can have a more informational meeting once we know where everyone is headed. And Rick Bates, who, as I'm sure everyone knows, is Robin's significant other, is going to be working on a couple of special projects on a contract basis with Rockport, and it sounds like the library and fiber are the two. So I'm going to let Robin, if everyone's okay with that, let Robin kind of spearhead that. What I'm finding hard is allocating enough time to everything on this list. And sometimes we have committees that are very ambitious and very moving forward and doing all the work, which is good and bad. And in this one, I need a little more oomph from Cedac, I think, and so I'm glad. And I did include that on the number 8. So I'm glad Robin is willing to take that up, and she'll at least start that process. Anyone got any questions on that? And that was what we had talked about prior, was doing a meeting with we were going to reach out to the Down East Broadband Utility to have them come in and have some other folks come in and to see how they were doing broadband from a utility-wide basis, more regional approach in Baileyville and Calais. And Hope is talking about broadband, Rockport's talking about it, and see what we can do locally to see if there's enough support for a utility of sorts. It's just one of many options that's out there. I mean, I, for one, tend to like just let the market play out, but sometimes it doesn't get us to where we need. Any thoughts, questions?
Sounds good.
Sounds good? Okay. Affordable housing. That is, I have spoken to the folks at the MDI, the Island Housing Trust. They got a great program. She's willing to come and sit down and chat with us about it, on how they're addressing housing issues on MDI and in the Ellsworth area. I mean, it's pretty significant. Jackson Lab is open another facility out there, and housing is at a premium right now. The Mid-Coast is no different. And, you know, we had talked about, in the past, there was a committee that was looking at housing, and that was the CAHO, right? And I'm not sure that's what we need at this point. I just think we need a group of folks to start looking at options, and make some recommendations on housing, on how we address it, whether we should do it locally or regionally. I'm willing to look at it and be involved in that, but I just need I can't be the one to create recommendations on housing. So it was on our work plan to the select board, was housing affordability, strategies for increasing the availability of affordable housing. It seems like, you know, Robin mentions the same thing. We ought to try to get an ad hoc committee on it. I'd like to know everyone's thoughts on that. We haven't formally asked the select board for that, or to say, yay, should we go do that? I'm kind of liking to run things through the select board and get their blessing before we go do that. So it may be just a small group of Cedac, and maybe we can go out and grab a couple other, you know, people that do housing.
People that have some
Yeah.
housing
Yeah.
background or connections.
Yeah. Does that make sense to do that from that perspective, or like go to the select board and say, hey, and I talked to Audra today, I do want to get back to you, probably this month, with July, probably the 1st of July, with a kind of an update, just so I can get some ordinance amendments in the hopper. So I'll likely talk about that,
One question, did you ever do the study on the road at Sagamore?
I just sent him an email actually today, and I said, I haven't seen anything from you. I'd like to get a summary on that. So I haven't seen it. I also haven't gotten a bill from him, so.
Okay.
But I did. I asked him, I had a scenario of 20 houses, single-family homes, and then I think I used a 20,000 square foot or 30,000, I don't remember off the top of my head, office, you know, square feet of office plus mixed use, and then did a mixed use category for him of 20 units and housing and commercial, trying to, again, cover at least as many bases I can. I mean, he couldn't do every scenario out there, but I gave him the single family, commercial and multifamily mixed use.
Find out when he comes back.
Yeah, yeah.
I must say, I mean, the whole affordable housing thing escapes my awareness and knowledge. The KO model, I think, was helpful for a few units, but if we're talking serious, you know, numbers of units, I mean, they have to be rentals.
Yeah.
And they have to, I think that's beyond our municipal capability to sponsor that. I mean,
I think it has to be regional, too.
yeah, regional too. Yeah. So I'm not sure what the answer is. I hear every city and town in the area talking about it.
Yeah.
But it's more just stating the need rather than saying, here's a way we execute a solution for that.
It's very interesting. You know, from Belfast to Rockland, I don't see anyone doing housing. Do you? I mean.
No? Right.
And
Not on a single
Rockland to
bucket.
Belfast, everyone's screaming, we need housing, we need housing, we need housing.
Yeah.
And I think that's, you know, apartments and single-family homes. I mean, if I had the wherewithal to do a development, I'd be doing single-family subdivisions around, nice ones, from Belfast to Rockland, and they'd be full. And so it's just interesting, and I don't know why the market isn't.
So I see in Ellsworth, you mentioned the MDI. I mean, I don't know how many units they've got going, but it must be up in the hundreds now.
Say that again? I missed
in
that.
Ellsworth for the MDI expansion
How
of
many housing units?
hundreds, I would say. And they're fairly large complexes, but they're all privately driven,
Right, right, right.
so.
Right,
And the zoning was right, and the land was right, and things like that.
Yeah.
But
right. I mean, and well, all we can do is try to make that, that path to a developer, you know, clean and open for them. I mean, that's what we can do. Yeah.
There seems to be.
Rockport, at least talking about that, a committee talking about that on the old elementary
RES
school
site.
site. And that's apparently been floating around out there, but it's back again. And it's I don't know the status of the committee, but it was a group, it was in the paper in the last day or two, that they're talking about that again, that site for affordable housing. So, at least, I don't know if that'll go anywhere, but.
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, and it's a struggle. You know, you got a lot of, you got the Penquist housing folks of this world, right? And, I forget, there's a handful of other firms, companies out there that do it. But they tend to do, you know, the Section 8, the low-income housing, and nothing at all against that. I mean, we've got some low-income housing up here in the neighborhood, and it doesn't seem to impact anyone, and, you know, everything seems fine. But I'm not sure that's what we need. I mean, maybe we need some of that here, but we need some housing for folks like myself, young families to move in.
I have a question. I know that you've studied the land in Camden. We just don't have much land available.
Well, the town-owned land.
Right.
Yes.
But, because I'm curious what you're seeing, you know, up and down the coast from Belfast to Rockland. How do we compare, what do all the other towns look like in terms of available land? And obviously, private land is up to the people that own it.
Yeah,
You've seen,
it's all private land.
Yeah.
No one's doing anything with it. I mean, I think everyone, all the communities, most communities are sitting with the same amount of land like we do. I mean, I think we have more than at most.
oh, okay.
But it just seems prime for a, you know, developer to come in and, or, I think, you know, Camden's unique too. I think people outside of the core of Camden, as you go up Mullineaux, and I think everyone loves the pastoral landscape that we have here. I mean, it is stunning, it's beautiful, but people hold on to it and they don't want to develop their land.
Is it what's holding the developers back? Is it the price of the land? Is it the lack of infrastructure or utilities? What, in your sense, and on that corridor from Belfast to Rockland, what's the holdup? If the need is there?
I don't think the land's for sale. That's
Are
right.
there developers that are?
And that's another good point. I mean, I think at this point, I'm not even sure there's developers around that can do it.
Yeah, I think everybody's here is working all they can.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the contractors
And there's a
are,
lot of people doing
Contractors are
the
just
big
flat out.
fancy single,
right, single home here, and they're not doing, you know, subdivision with 20 units in it.
I'm betting on Rockport in a sense. I mean, they have a town vote to extend the sewer all along Route 1. If you look, I don't know, from Plants Unlimited, let's say, down to the hospital, especially on the inland side, I mean, there's a lot of flat land in there. I think pretty big parcels. Whether it's available or not, I don't know.
Right, that's
but
the-
That's gonna, I mean, I think infrastructure is a big part of it. I mean,
That's
we could
what
have
I-
some here if we extended the sewer.
Yeah, sewer and, is water, what about water? Is water out?
Water too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's probably part of it.
I will say, you know, there are some that want me to look at reducing densities in existing zoning where we've got sewer and water already to allow more units. I mean, that's a way to look at it. And we also already allow, you know, homestays, we allow accessory units. I'm just not sure, again, that people are doing it. Because our zoning is, you know, when Belfast looked at doing this and addressing this problem, they said, oh, we gotta get people the ability to have an accessory dwelling unit on their property. We already have that. And not many people, I mean, people do take advantage of it, but, you know, it's not, I think, I don't know, but it's something we ought to look at, and I'm gonna ask the select board just to see if we can create an ad hoc committee to look at it. What comes of it, I don't know.
And so what, does that committee fall under Cedac? Or how does that work? Is that a separate committee that's working?
That's something
under the-
I need to talk about. I mean, the last thing I really want to do is kind of create more committees, but I think you need to create them when there's a need for them,
Well,
and
I
there may
think-
be a need for it now.
And I think, I agree not creating more, but I think sometimes you need expertise and talent and resources that may not be
Sure.
currently on your committee, and that's
Right.
what that's where you go to.
Right, I think I guess for me, I'd rather say, okay, it'd be like a subcommittee of CDAC, and
I
we
guess that's
just
what
take
I
a
mean.
couple
You
people
bring
from
in
CDAC
outside
and bring in
people,
some
right.
people.
That's,
and
I
help.
guess that's where I'm
That's,
headed,
that's kind of what I would recommend to the select board.
would make sense.
Yep. And so fifth on the agenda was, there is, the Tibbetts property, there's a subdivision that is being proposed right now, a 3-lot subdivision. And it has the one building on Colcord Avenue, right? There's a large lot on Colcord, and you got the building on the corner. And there are 2 lots proposed to go, that would be coming towards Union. 2 lots. And one of the neighbors up there is expressed concern about the subdivision, and it's industrial and it's commercial. And he has been advocating to me to rezone that whole industrial park area to village. And I am very hesitant to ever go down that road. I mean, we don't have a lot of commercial space in town. I can see, say food sovereignty stuff takes off, right? I mean, there's a need for space in Camden, and I can conceivably see that happening up there. I can see small workspaces. I don't see any large, heavy industry coming to Camden. But I see small industry and small businesses coming to Camden or expanding in Camden. We need to have available land for that.
Is that, I'm looking at that on the map, that's where, like, the parking lot now?
Yes,
There's
and
parking
right
lot
now,
And then back toward Union?
Superior
Restoration.
has some parking, they're parking in that, yeah.
There's
So
a
that
house
would
on the
cut
corner
into-
there, but the rest of that side of the street all the way down. looks
All the way
like,
down is, right.
Lime Rock, okay.
Yeah. And I will say, the one lot on furthest to the left is fairly small lot. It's gonna be a very small building. The wetlands are pretty significant in that area, so the likelihood is probably one building, an additional building, and then they may share parking, I just don't see full build out there. But I wanted to bring it to your attention because those things are concerning to me, when, we've got an existing industrial park, we're limited on commercial space we already have in town, and someone wants to rezone it village. I mean, I get it. That said, it's been industry for a long time. And, because people move into a neighborhood, you kind of know what is there. And I know that Tibbetts, when they were there, I read through some of the reviews when they went for an expansion, it was quite, neighborhoods came out and they weren't happy about it. That said, I do think that the zoning board of appeals and the planning board, they do pretty robust reviews here. I mean, they take into consideration everyone's opinion, more than any other community I've ever worked in.
I remember when Tibbetts proposed that expansion on the corner, I mean, there was a controversy about it. But the planning board, required plantings, and I know Tibbetts really pushed back hard, it's way too expensive for them, but, I mean, that's the most benign building
It is.
for industrial use that you could have.
It is.
I don't think anybody objects to it now.
Right.
But that's vacant now too, right?
It's vacant, yes. And what about the building across the street that was their
Right.
production facility and parking lot? Is that
I don't know what's happening
building
with that.
adaptable for something else?
I'm sure it is. The guy who owns this lot he owns
that too.
yeah, he owns that too. So I don't know what his plans are with that right now. I haven't heard from him on that. that's available.
Yeah. He's always been quite approachable, so.
Yes, yeah. I know his plans just got approved in Rockland,
Yeah.
the zoning stuff, so, I will reach out to him, see what, if any, and that's a challenge, people think town government can go do things from an economic development perspective, and we don't have a lot of, that we can offer. So, that said, I am looking at one of the options, I'm just gonna jump around a little bit, about investigating incentives to help businesses and building owners preserve and maintain historic buildings in the downtown core. We can do that through CDBG funds. So I'd like to look at that. Everyone think that's a good idea?
Yeah, can you qualify for, you had a low-income impact?
I know, I've got to
Say, how
look
do you-
at,
how do you-
well, that's, when we were in Bangor, we did it too, and that census tract in Bangor was an odd one, and for some reason, they were included in it. I don't know why.
Yeah, you have to
It just
declare a
depends.
blighted area or something.
Yes, you do. You have to find a blighted area.
What?
What is the process? I mean, where
We do
is it?
development block grants.
Yeah, I know
so-
that, but I'm like him, how do you qualify for?
I know, I haven't looked at it at all. I haven't even looked at a census tract in this, where they define areas. I don't know.
Do we have areas in Camden that, or you don't know?
I don't know.
Okay.
That's the challenge sometimes, is that sometimes the areas that they include in the mapping
Yeah.
don't make sense. In Bangor, we were successful at having them look at it in another way one time.
Okay.
You could do surveys. Are you familiar with that? You can actually do a survey,
Yeah.
go door to door and ask for information rather than taking the information, yeah.
But what would that money be used for?
Worth a
That's the
try.
part I missed. What-
Well, it's for, exterior facade improvements.
Okay.
It's like, so someone, if they need a roof or they need windows, they don't have to take that money from their business to put in the new roof. They could use grant funding for that while they can invest in their own monies elsewhere.
These would be commercial or retail, as,
I mean, you can do them residential too, and that may be something we should look at. We are gonna look at doing, kind of like a similar to Efficiency Maine, only we're gonna call it Efficiency Camden or something along those lines, where, folks that, meet certain income qualifications can apply to the town for a grant to help them put in heat pumps, or help them put in solar, or help them air seal their home or insulate their home. And we wouldn't be using CDBG funds for those or anything. That would be trust funds that the town has, and we're able to, I've got to creatively figure out how to, you want to make sure the money's going into the right places, and so people that actually need it. So income levels and house value and all that stuff, I got to figure out how to best get there. But I'm excited about that one. That's a huge, I did energy improvements on my house last year, and my heating bill this year was fantastic. I mean, it was almost half of what I was spending. If we can do that for a lot of these old homes, I mean, that's huge. That's money in people's pockets.
One of the things when the Watershed School did a study of Camden at the energy use, the majority of use where you could actually conserve was from the residential buildings. It wasn't cutting down cars or insulating business stuff. It was the old, we have so many old homes that are so leaky, and so that was a surprise, because you think about that when you're thinking about energy conservation. So that's one of the reasons this came up in discussion, because we can make a huge difference for the town overall for energy usage, and obviously a lot of residents by doing this program, so
It's huge.
very excited about
It
this.
is huge.
and this is good use of that money, too.
Yeah, I think so. A lot of some towns have done these, and then they've picked, the preferred contractor, and you need to use this contractor.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that. My plan is if you're on Efficiency Maine's contractor list, you can use whoever you want. I much prefer that than picking a sole provider. What else do we have? Business licensing. I have been talking to many, many folks over the last year and who own businesses, and most businesses in town don't need town licensing other than their initial use permit. However, if you serve alcohol, you need a liquor license, you need a vitreler's license if you serve food, a lodging license if you provide lodging. Those are annual licenses, and some of these establishments are, they have to deal with, depending on the facility, 10 licenses, 12 licenses from the state and the town annually. And so I was just in conversation with a couple of these folks who were expressing concerns about these just annual things. It's like, by the time you get your elevator inspection and your sprinkler inspection, and your alarm inspection, and your food inspection, and your lodging inspection, and your liquor inspection, and your pool inspection, you're filling out the application and sending it again for next year. These years just run. So I'm starting to look at what options we have to reduce those, or to make them like every 2 years you need a vitreler's license, just to take something, just to give them something,
This came up we were discussing last year at a subgroup for the Harbor Committee. When it came up discussion, because the windjammers, their licenses are every 3 years, but the day sailors are every year. And it's a very cumbersome project for the day sailors, and it affects their schedule, everything. So they're wondering, can we go to 3 years? And thought that was a really sensible idea. And maybe we can move forward for that.
Yeah.
Because that would really be a great idea. And so I was curious about if you have research about, because I know we do these, we change the process at the select board to make them consent agendas, so we don't have to go through each one every time, because it was,
Cumbersome on your
a
end,
lot of
too.
work for us and everybody else in town. So I was just wondering if there's been research, have other towns done it? Has it worked? Have there been any problems anywhere? Do we know?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't heard of other towns doing it. I mean, honestly, it seems like towns, once they go down the road of licensing something, they just keep licensing it, and they don't end it.
Source of revenue.
Well, and for us, it's not really a source of revenue. I mean, I will say that say Vichler's license, right, which is food service, it's a $20 application fee. It does not pay for does not pay for the code officer, does not pay for the fire guys to go out, does not pay for administrative, doesn't pay for the select board meeting, that doesn't pay for any of it.
We have the reputation, that I don't think is totally well-deserved, that we're not business-friendly. This would be a way to make it a little easier, a little bit friendlier
Agreed,
for people.
agreed. And that's part of my idea. I mean, I did send an email around asking folks that do inspections of these, if they have any concerns about it. I want to make sure they're okay before I bring it, and didn't really have issue with it. However, it was like, just so you know, my last inspection, I identified this code violation, this egress door blocked, this egress area blocked. So these inspections do get us into places annually to make sure things are safe. That said,
Do we
if
need
they're
to-
already going in for, say, a liquor or a lodging, do we have to also
the
that same
licensing?
year?
Yeah, can we keep the inspections, which are safety, but change the licensing? And just to simplify the process a little bit.
That was my thought when I got that email back, was,
Yeah,
okay,
I know
then we
that
can work around this.
In looking at the license applications that come before the select board for 3 years now, the chief of police has signed off on every one, the fire marshal's, fire chief has signed off on every one. I've never seen any of them that one. I think there was one issue in 3 years where the police chief had anything to say about anything. So maybe there's a better way to handle it.
Yeah, I think there's a better way to handle it. I mean, I think Chief Farley does a great job at working with these folks to make sure they have their licenses and they're doing things appropriately. So I'll look at figuring out a way to, I think, reduce some of that if we can. That was my goal, and I thought I'd share with you, because I think we ought to look at that. I mean, like you said, I mean, Camden, I always heard when I was not here, Camden means no. You know, it's always no in Camden. You can't get your permit, you can't do X, Y, and Z in Camden. I'd like to try to change that a little bit.
Especially with it really is unfair for the day sailors as opposed to the windjammers. And it's such an arduous process for them. Just changing that would be a nice thing.
You're right, I just lost track of that one on my list. But that's gonna go back on my list for coming right up,
Great, thank you.
yeah. Anyone have any issues with that, or moving forward on something like that? That's all I had, really, and then I just had economic development strategies, and I had strengths and challenges and options. And then at the end was need assistance from Cedac to help bring some of the stuff to fruition. It's really interesting. I looked at the old, was it HNTB or that did the old economic development plan, analysis plan and all that. And then I looked at one that Damascotta had done a number of years ago, and they all say the same thing. They all say the same
Change the name
thing.
of the town.
Yeah. It's true. You know, quality of, for me, you know, like our quality, I think everyone knows this, and how do we take this and kind of, translate that into building the economy, making it a thriving economy here, bringing people here. People already come here, people move here. Can we have them bring their businesses here? Well, we need to make sure we have some commercial space, should they want to go here, come here with their commercial building. So we ought not do zoning map amendments to change industrial zones to village, in my view. It's clear fiber is key to this I think in my view. I think everyone, is saying that, the governor's saying that, everyone is saying that fiber. So for me, I think our priority really ought to be fiber.
As a select board member, that's been number one on my list for years.
So I'm gonna, as soon as Robin gets back, I'm gonna anoint her as the chair of the fiber subcommittee. And we ought to just take off on that and try to move that along as quickly as possible. And I'm gonna reach out regionally. She wants me to reach out regionally to people too, so we'll do that. We'll look at Rockland, Rockport, Thomaston, Hope, all the way up to Belfast. I know Belfast often is an outlier, and they tend to be in their own little circle sometimes. But I think it's important, if we can bring more people to the market, the better.
I've been thinking too, whether this is the right way to approach it or not, I don't know, but, we kind of, those of us that live here a long time, see some evolution, but to me, I'm not sure how it accumulates and can be interpreted. So, and it used to be like the Bureau of Labor Statistics was a good source, maybe the Chamber of those stuff. But what was our employment base 20 years ago, with 10 compared to now? I mean, are we still a service center community or not? I mean, how seasonal are we? I mean, what are the trends in all of that? And somewhere it makes sense to me to say, I think it makes sense to say, we see ourselves as becoming more of this, less of that, and so on. And how do we know how to interpret that unless we develop some stats?
Right.
But, I mean, I say that in fear that it's just another plan that goes on the shelf, and I'm hoping there's a quick way of doing that, to say, especially like around the Colquitt Avenue thing. Say, well, more residential, well, we're already like 80% more residential than we were
Right.
before, 10 years ago. And so, what's your vision for our community? Is it, you want to convert the
All
downtown,
residential?
all residential? Because that's the way, it's seasonal residential.
Right.
So, I mean, one could say that's the way it's going.
Back to this rezoning of that Concord Avenue, I don't think that addresses our housing needs. It may help a little, but my bet is that it's not going to help us.
Right.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think your point, though, is spot on. You know, what are we?
What are we? What do we want to be,
What do we want to be?
Do we like what we've become?
Yeah.
Do we need to rebalance somehow? But those are questions that are hard to get into, really. 'Cause
They are.
A lot of people say, well, I like it, but not in my neighborhood.
Right.
Well, that's my point, but I don't know, yeah.
It's human nature.
That's this driving.
That's what's driving it.
I mean, that's the tannery thing, too.
Yeah, it is.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean,
And it may solve, well, I just don't think that going through that process is gonna help. Not what you're talking about, but I mean rezoning and changing stuff. But, you know, I think
Yeah.
that part doesn't help. But that would be great if we could identify those things. I don't know where.
Well, I mean,
Where you have access to that.
well, the East Main Development, well, it used to be East Main Development, Mid-Coast Economic Development, could be, we used to pull some of that stuff together, I
Yeah,
think, pretty quickly.
I will start looking at it. I did pull out the directive for Cedac, right? And it says that we will, or you will, examine short-term and long-term economic and community development needs of the town and recommend economic development focus of the community. And then it talks about, where did I see that earlier? Looking at the plans and, you know, where we are with trends. And that's what we need to really, I think we need to try to touch on that and see really where we're going with it.
I think it's an important thing because sometimes I run into people and they discuss, I'd really like us to be this, or I'd like to do that, or we should do this. And we have to look at who we are and what's available. We just can't change because somebody wants it to change. We have to look at who we are, what our facilities are, what access we have to make any changes before we can say, well, let's become this. And it doesn't always work, you know. People
Yeah.
see something they want it to be in it, but it doesn't always make sense. But knowing who we are
True.
and saying, you know, this is who we are, this is what we have to deal with.
I find it interesting that you have a tension between, like, affordable housing, which is usually a lower or a higher density situation, versus, say, land trusts, which land trusts are only successful because we want them to be successful as a community. And what that does is, of course, is the antithesis of high-density development. And so, yeah, on the one hand, you have, we want a beautiful place and we want to keep it, we want to preserve it. Competing interests.
Oh,
On the other hand, we're trying to figure out where these people are going to live. And it's this yin and yang thing that's going on. There's other issues, obviously, but, I mean, that's one I see, because when I start going down, out 105, and I go out, past the Snow Bowl, I start running into, you know, properties that are preserved and whatnot, and, it's like you say, what are we? Who are we?
Yeah. And
One
just,
lot at a time, maybe.
One lot at a time.
I think that
I mean,
actually
it's
has some-
true.
In Camden,
In Camden, it's one lot at a
that's, I
time.
think, the only way you can do it. That's why I think it has to be a regional thing. In Camden, though, it's tough. I go out Mechanic to Melvin Heights, you go up Mechanic just before it forks. There's 80 acres on the right-hand side there, under Tree Farm. And you got Leonard Luckner's place. You know, he's got 36 acres, may he rest in peace, 36 acres there. And the Blueberry Farm's got, I think, 350 acres back there. There's a lot of land up there.
There is. And that's what I'm,
But it goes
the
back to none
pastoral,
of us for sale.
But it not only is it not for sale, but it's under Tree Farm, it would take vast sums of money to pull it out.
pull it out,
And so there's this tension of preserving,
right,
right, you know, keeping the forest beautiful
right, what we'd like to see.
versus building homes.
Well, and that's where we gotta, I think, you know, be strong when we look at properties. And I say strong, that's not the right word, but, when we look at like the tannery site, that, you know, because again, that's a site, utilities, right at the street, walkable to a downtown, walkable to a brand-new school. And, you know, what's the highest and best use for that? My mind, likely mixed commercial and residential, because because it's right there, you know, I mean, you've got infrastructure there, and it's not taking up that pastoral land that everyone loves and values about this town.
I think, and I think, well, you know, the vitality of a town is really a mix of those things.
It is.
You can't just have one park after another, although I've been to Savannah and they've done it. It's beautiful.
Well, it started that way, you know,
But,
back in the 1700s.
yes, exactly. It wasn't burned down.
No, well, that's.
Yeah.
But, anyway.
Well, no, I think that's a good segue into what Robin at the end on her email said. I had met with Robin and Jane LaFleur, she was with the Orton Family Foundation, and then she now works for them as a consultant, doing Heart and Soul. And I'm not sure Heart and Soul is right for Camden. But having the conversations that Heart and Soul generates and motivates in people, I think tries to get at, you know, we're all kind of all over the place. We all have these desires. We like what we have. We also want this. How do we make it all work? And it comes from, I think, conversation and openness and having trust and having faith in the whole community, that we'll get what we like in the end. I mean, but I think having these conversations, at least starting them, is important, because we can't do anything, you know, from a housing perspective without having some of these conversations. I mean, the town owns, you know, we got 77 acres at Sagamore Farm. We've got the tannery site, and then we have a couple of lots that I think we'll try to move, and sell for house lots, one lot at a time.
Exactly.
But we can be creative, and we can say, you know what, we're gonna do this, but you're gonna build a X type of house. You know, there's gonna be solar on it. We can make you do that, you know, and we can also have some deed restrictions on, you know, return on that house, that they've done out on Mount MDI and they've done out on North Haven. Just so, you know, we can try to ensure that houses stay somewhat affordable over time. And, you know, that house, all of a sudden, that was 300,000, because the market got it up to 600, you know, it's not affordable anymore for a family like myself, you know, to come into town. So, I mean, I think that's what we ought to try to look at, maybe one lot at a time while we're looking at this regional approach, because we got to do something regionally. There was a guy I met with from California last week, or the week before. Fantastic guy. And he came in, he was looking for a house for his daughter. He's like, where are the houses? No one's building any houses. I said, no. You know, and he was blown away. He's like, you have the most beautiful, maybe, town in the country, and there's no one building houses here, and there's plenty of land. It was a fascinating conversation. Went out to lunch with him and had a great talk, but.
I gotta pick up the grandson.
You do? All right, awesome. Thank you. Thank you. So I just wanted to lay out some of, for me, our strategies, and I mean, we've got to somehow start trying to invigorate the, you know, the business community and the town's connection to it a little more. And maybe I just haven't gotten into it enough. I know they do the coffees, you know. Connect over coffee, but are there things that we can do? You know, does the business community feel like we're a hindrance to their, you know, business, or do they not, or do they value what town government's doing? Do they think town government can do more? I just don't know.
Yeah, you know, the Connect Over Coffee used to be part of the network
Yeah.
with the town, and is now shifted over. It's under the umbrella of Cabbage. And they've taken that over. It's quite successful, and I'm on a little steering committee with that. Although I don't get to go to the meetings because I have I have a conflict on Wednesdays. But it's a very vibrant group, and you've hosted one of them, and we're in our second year to where people are saying, I'll do that again, I'll host that again.
yeah.
So it's going quite well. But I don't know how many true retail businesses go to that. I mean, it's a lot of banks and insurance and, other peripheral groups, but downtown retailers, if that's what you're saying. There are some, but it's not heavily attended by them.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be retailers. I'm just wondering, do they think the town, do they value the town government? Do they value what we do or what we can do for them? Or has it just forever been this, it's the town of Camden, they don't let you even put a sign up,
I don't know, I don't know the answer to that, what their feeling is, and if that's a good group to gauge that. If that's a
Right,
group
I guess that was my
of
kind of
that
question
might not
about
be- That might be not the
Connect Over
right group.
Coffees.
I don't know. It might be a good question for the chamber.
Yeah, no, I think that, I mean, obviously, it's hard to say
Yeah.
one answer for
Yeah,
a broad cross-section of businesses, but I think the more we can do to have interaction, I mean, I know you've come a few times to that event in particular, and, we have, the chamber has business after hours that rotate around the region, but we have a few a year in Camden, so, I mean, you tend to get a little more of a cross-section of Camden businesses when it's here. So, those events are certainly open to, having town representatives come, they're not closed events. So I think the, the building the relationship over the long haul is, so that when an issue does come up down the road, it's a known entity, right? It's, so, and I think there has been some of that from the town. I know,
The next
you
meeting
and,
will be beginning of July, correct?
yeah, it's,
So that
is it gonna be on the 3rd? Are they
The
gonna do
next,
one?
Connect.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always the first Wednesday of July, of the month.
the month.
And I'm not sure where the.
It'll be a week from Wednesday. Wednesday.
And, I guess, again, being on that small committee, let me see where it is. The next one is at Quarry Hill in July. But what I've been trying to push with that group is that one way you attract attendees to that is they need to leave having learned something or felt like they were, for giving up this hour and coming and sitting, I walked away and I know something I need to know but didn't. And that's a great place for the town to be represented and say, just for that whole process I always thought it'd be great if someone who spoke for the town was there that told about something that's going on. It could be, something downtown that's good or
Well,
bad that's about to affect you and your business.
Yeah, I've had a conflict
Sign myself up,
at that
so.
time, so I've been for a while. But
Yeah.
I'm curious about, there's a lot of work put into Jazz in June. And it looks like it came off pretty well.
I think it did.
Low key, and I'd be curious to see if people felt it at all. I mean, the first one's the hardest, because it's hard
Sure.
to really gauge, but,
That'd be a good
that's sort of the
question.
sort of things we're trying to do. And
Yeah, that'd be a good question, is how did that impact you, good or bad? I think it went well, and I hope that it continues, because
I
I
had
think.
a
it's-
conversation this morning with Josh from 40 Paper, and he said June has been incredibly good for him. Above last year at this time.
So I think that group, and the format for that meeting is very informal. Connect Over Coffee, it's usually just a conversation of issues going on, and everybody kind of introduces themselves and tells, what's going on with them. But that's a great opportunity for somebody from the town to be there and say, what can we do better?
I'll make a deal
or
with
not
you, I'll go
good?
with you next week.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's,
That's the kind of stuff I think that when an issue comes up, that then, right, they feel like they know somebody they could pick up the phone and call rather than
right.
come to a select board meeting with pitchforks, right? I mean, so you want to have that relationship so that it doesn't come to that, right?
And the stuff
So,
we're talking about here, I mean, even, the tannery, workforce housing, broadband, all those are
Plays
things.
into all of it.
That plays into our business
Right.
community and the people who should be interested in this Connect Over Coffee and what's going on in the town. Those are all issues that impact their lives and their livelihood.
And we don't all have all the answers, you know? It's-
Cedac,
We all
right?
have answers.
Yeah, the next one's
Quarry
at
Hill.
Quarry Hill, and I think the thing I need to do is make sure, Mark, you're on the list, you get the emails advising of the meetings, or do you?
I'm not sure I'm getting the connection.
Why don't
I
why
don't
don't I
remember.
make sure that you two?
Yeah, I used to be.
Yeah, I will.
It's probably 'cause I
communicate
didn't
all
go.
Support on there, right? I mean, Audra, and, you know, I
that.
may not always be able to make it, but
Well-
at least to know, you know.
Yep.
Again, this started off back when that was part of this network board, and so the town was represented by staff, and
Right.
and that's not the case anymore.
Right.
And so I
Sure.
think it would be good to have.
Sounds good. I will be there.
Another topic for me, Jeremy,
Yeah.
and I just know what I read in the newspapers, but Lyman Morse, they need any help, or
Yeah,
it seems like they've got some plans, I
Yeah.
don't know the details.
I guess I'll try to go there a little bit right now, quickly. Yeah, I think everyone read in the paper that they've got a big plan, they got a big grant to do a pretty large expansion.
Same grant as Yachting Solutions.
And yes, so I drafted something for the region's economic development strategy with McEd, and it was very well received. It's hard for me to go into some detail right now, just because we're not there yet, but Lyman Morse has some great plans. I mean, they're looking, Camden is a significant base for them, and this harbor is like, from what I hear, I'm not a sailor, but our harbor is like none other in the world, and people, if you're a sailor, you know, one of your on your to-do list before your bucket list is Camden Harbor. And there are some plans that will make Camden
Leave it to
a
that.
spectacular harbor for years and years and years to come. The Army Corps is anxious to help on some things. We have a very challenging harbor. You can't really sit out in your boat at all in the outer harbor. And the Army Corps is willing to help on some of that stuff. They have you probably were here when they were looking at seawalls and things like that. That is not gone from Army Corps. They are still, they determined Camden Harbor a federal necessity. It's an interesting, I don't know how that happens, but all this plays together to, I mean, we really, and I guess thanks for bringing up Lyman Morse, because when we talk about what do we want our, you know, our town to be.
Yes.
You know, it is, we have the mountains to the sea, and Camden Harbor is forever what brought people here and attracted people here and keeps people here and keeps people coming here. And when you know, when MBNA left, and when all these, you know, we've had turnovers in businesses, we don't have a very large employer, but we've got Lyman and Morse here. And they want to make significant, and are planning on making significant investment in this community. And we need to support that.
Those efforts.
Because it just makes this community stronger and stronger, and will keep people coming here. And will make their sailing trip here much better. So I will share some of this stuff with the select board likely in July. It's pretty exciting. And so, yeah, thanks for bringing that up, because you're right, they are, I think we need to focus on them and give them, because just the spillover business from Lyman and Morse is huge. It's huge.
Boat maintenance.
Right.
They're good.
And one of the preliminary numbers that I saw, they were talking, you know, upwards of 50 new employees. I mean, that's huge for this town, you know? It's huge. So, and when the time comes, we'll definitely go down that road. But that's exciting to me. And just talking about the harbor I I don't know if you've heard, but we're taking part in the Penobscot Bay Resiliency Project, one of the many 10 towns in Penobscot Bay. I was down on the water with them and on the landing with the surveyors and engineers and consultants from Wood Associates this morning. They were assessing, they had surveyors down there, they were checking out all our stuff and documenting it all. And we talked with them at great length about all of this stuff and Lyman and Morse's plans, because we're trying to make sure that the harbor, our infrastructure is resilient, but we're all tied together down there, you know, I mean, the elevations are such that everyone's at the same level. So we're all in it together, and we're gonna need buy-in from private, you know, partners as well when we start redoing landings and things like that to make sure that it's resilient. So that, I just want to bring that up because that was a neat project, and that's moving forward now. Yeah, any other thoughts? I mean, what I did was I just kind of went down strategy, you know, what are our strengths? What makes Camden unique? I didn't even include the harbor there. Oh, I did, harbor. And number two, the challenges. I mean, fear of change, that to me that's a killer all the time. People hate change, they like what we have. But somehow, you know,
If you don't change, it will go away.
it can go
It
away.
will change if you don't.
It will, yeah.
Absolutely.
What, your lack of demand for new growth, tell me what you mean.
Well, I mean, I see the Tibbet site, and I say, you know, we need opportunity and options for people to develop and have commercial opportunity, land available. I just say that land's been there, right? And it's not been used yet, you know? So sometimes I feel like we can try to do so much, but for some reason, something is not,
Clicking, yeah.
you know, clicking there. And I just don't know what that is. And that's what that was trying to explain, Lehman. And I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, just armchair quarterbacking, I'm glad they're still staying in the region. And I have a little trouble envisioning commercial use for that building because it was built
Yeah.
as a professional office for healthcare. But he's going to put a 3,000 square foot warehouse that goes with it. And I said, well, that's all good, but, so what does that mean the site here lacks? What is it that a smart developer from Arizona looks at and says, this is a better option? I'm glad it's here, so I'll be out by saying.
Sure.
If there's another potential out there, what is it that, it's not,
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, and I struggle too with the whole going from Camden to Rockland. Yeah, I mean, that's not economic development, you know,
Yeah.
in the least bit.
yeah.
It's just
Right, it's,
moving.
it's the same market, really.
same market.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah,
But now there's an opportunity here
sure,
to expand the
Right.
market, so.
right.
How's it work?
How do we maximize that opportunity, right?
Yeah, and how's the owner? I mean, right, I mean, how's the owner gonna I don't know. And I should have a conversation with him. I mean, there was someone that came in to talk to into the office the other day when he was looking for a piece of land for a business. And we told him about they were gonna go taking this through subdivision. I thought for a split second, I thought the whole subdivision was gonna go away, because I thought this guy was gonna go over there and say, hey, can I buy the whole thing? And who knows, maybe that will pan out, but, yeah, I mean, and I don't know, you know, again, I think it's the regional approach, we need to, you know, Maine's an interesting place, we tend to be very much our own selves, and then at the same time, we say we gotta be regional, but then you've got Rockport and Rockland and Camden and Lincolnville and Belfast. I mean, Belfast, of any of them, I think is the one that really is to themselves, and they don't even expand outside of Belfast to, you know, sharing services. They don't do any of that. But, you know, what can we do to try to look at it a more regional approach? And I appreciate Robin in her last final paragraph said, and Audrey and I had the same conversation about trying to kind of recreate what was going on a number of years ago, where it was a more regional, you had Belfast to Rockland, folks were meeting, it wasn't monthly, or maybe it was monthly at that time. To kind of hash out all this stuff from a regional perspective, on how we can lift this
Made
whole
up that
region up.
group? Was it elected officials, was it town staff?
I think it was town staff and businesses and elected officials, I think, chamber.
These are K-Red,
Yeah,
Knox, Waldo,
Yes.
Regional.
Yeah.
Economic Development Society.
Council, yeah.
But I'm not, I was on that committee for a long time, and probably you were too, but I'm not sure anything really happened as a result of it. We had some interesting meetings. but-
yeah.
Right, and I'd love to know why nothing happened, or did it just, you know,
Well, because to me, it didn't have enough results to gain either municipal support or even private contributions to keep it going, so it dissolved, and McCad District and EMDC
right,
split the territory up,
right,
with Waldo County being represented by 3 different
right.
regional entities. Bit to Augusta, a bit to Bangor, and a bit,
Right.
so,
Yeah. Yeah, and now, you know, Mid-Coast Regional Planning is not even around anymore.
no, well, I don't think so.
I don't think so. I think the board's still here. I think they're still trying to operate a little bit. But so I'm gonna try to jump into that piece a little bit and see if I can just at least start stirring it up a little bit again. Because this stuff never goes away.
Right.
And we never solve it, and we still keep saying to ourselves, why don't we regionalize? Why don't we do that? Why don't we, and no one ever,
It doesn't happen.
and nothing happens.
Well, to that point, though, I mean, the hospitals have regionalized. And, you know, Taylor Allen is regionalized.
The difference with
There's a couple of those things.
businesses can regionalize because somebody there has the control to say,
Right.
we're gonna do this.
Gonna do it.
And I'm gonna buy you and we're gonna do this.
Right.
Just from working with multiple towns on different agendas that we're trying to do together, New England is very much I've done it this way for 100 years, just leave me alone and let me continue to do it.
Yeah.
It gets that way where, we're all right in what we want, which is different from what the next town wants. And, it's hard to argue with somebody else that says, well, no, this is what we want.
And which is different than the neighborhood, the next street over wants, you know, not even the town over. Right.
It's human nature it makes it difficult.
Yeah. But at least, I'll at least, you know, broach that subject a little bit and see if we can start something again a little bit. And maybe there's new players, new people involved, you know, that will at least carry it. That's my thought. And maybe the fiber might be a good start.
That might be
Yeah,
one that.
that would be,
You know,
Start the
and just say,
snowball
hey,
rolling, yeah.
let's just look at this. We're all dealing with it. We're all in the same boat. We don't have enough people.
That's something that will help everyone.
It will help everyone.
absolutely.
Okay.
As long as somebody else pays for it.
Right, that's the main thing. Where do we find the money, right? That's the hard part.
Well, I think the Baileyville Callis thing is a good model, if that's the way to go, utility, a low, you know, a regional utility that deals with it. Unless you just threaten it so much that the utilities come and that the market says, okay, no need for that utility, we'll do it ourselves. And maybe that's what we get, I don't know. Push them and they do it. So that's where I'm at, that's what I've been, I thought on the, any thoughts,
You got an
any?
energy meeting? Mark, you have a 5:30 here.
Do I have what?
You have a 5:30 here. Is your energy?
No, not today. Not today. Energy was last week. I was out of town. I missed it.
Are
No, I
we,
was just curious about.
yeah, no, I think we're
Oh,
good. Any questions, thoughts, comments? Want me to work on something
no, I don't think.
other than all this?
No, this is the plate phone, don't do it anymore.
It's a lot.
No, I think that's it. I mean, I'd like to have a little more conversation about the whole strategies.
I know.
As it goes on.
Yeah,
and not,
yeah.
Just kind of keep
And maybe, for me, if there are things that, zoning ordinances or other things that we can do, that we can amend, that can make things, open things up a little bit more. I don't know. I just want people to constantly be thinking like I am on, what can we do, or can we look at things differently? Can we look at zoning differently? I mean, that's another thing I will say. And Roger, maybe you and I have chatted about this before, but the way we have coastal residential districts in town, we've got one zone called coastal residential district, but it's in three very distinct, separate parts of the town that are not the same, but the zoning's the same. So I'm gonna try to start looking at coastal residential to see, can we make it, can we call it CR1, CR2, and CR3, and have different uses allowed in like CR1 than we do in CR2 and CR3? It just may be worth, because it may give people more opportunity on there. But that's the thing too, is like I'm not seeing requests for, hey, I'm almost to the Lincolnville town line, I'd like to do this, can I do that in
Right,
town?
it's not
I'm not hearing
there,
that from people.
right.
And am I not hearing that from people because for so long it's been what it is, and it's the CR, and everyone knows what that is, and that means, nothing happens there commercially, really? Is that why I'm not hearing, those requests, or is it, I don't know.
I don't want to be controversial, but I think it'd be worthwhile to look at the sewer service map and say, where can the sewer lines be expanded? By gravity. And to me, the end of Cobb Road, there's a main that runs right there, you can hit it by gravity, but some of that land's just sold, I don't know, it's probably another 20, 30 acres.
Right.
You go out, you could go to Mullenell Road, a height of land there, open up that intersection. I mean, there was always the plan to serve a mountainside trailer park, which they truck their sewerage into the treatment plant every day. And what would happen if you put sewer along 52 at the pump station? I mean, I think it's in a long-range plan. But, I mean, the sewer hasn't been extended
Long time.
20 years probably now.
Plan to take it down, I guess the last I heard is that the plan was to take it down John Street.
John, that's that one too.
Yeah.
Yeah, all that has been looked at, and
Yeah. I will look
and
at,
some of that stuff is cheap
Yeah.
as far as infrastructure goes.
right, yeah.
It's not cheap in terms of neighborhood reactions, probably.
Or pump stations.
Yeah, well, avoid the pump station, well, except for a mountain view, you can't,
Yeah.
mountainside, you can't avoid that.
Right. All right.
But I would think the sewer folks would have that.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. I mean, I wish we weren't embarking on a $17 million sewer project right now.
Yeah.
Except that if we don't, we could have big problems down the
Yeah.
line.
That's right.
It'll be
It's-
more
it's-
than a
it's
$17 million
essential.
project.
I'm being facetious.
I'm proud of the community
For
that is
sure.
taking care of some infrastructure, which is so important. And, and a lot of other places are gonna, I look at the country and I go, oof. I'm glad we're doing what needs to be done.
For sure. And I just envision more and more consent agreements coming from EPA to a lot of these small towns. More and more.
Yeah.
And it's good we're getting on top of it. That's all I had for today.
Yeah.
I think that's good.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Okay.
A lot of good stuff.
I will I'll send Robin a nice email and
We accept, right?
volunteer.
accept her volunteering to be the, to spearhead the fiber. But I think that's really gonna be the critical one.
I think that's such an important thing for our town, especially because we get so many artistic people coming here.
Yeah,
And that's, If you don't know, I came here, I work in the music business, and I was able to live here, but because of internet and phone, work remotely. But yet I find that when I have to, even just uploading music videos, which are just 3-4 minutes, that's taking more time than I would like it to take. And if you're, I look at SIF, which brings in so many people to visit this town, and so many people that are younger, but at some point are gonna have families and go, wow, I'd love to live in that town. And they have fiber, and we can move there, and I can commute to New York when I need to commute, but we can do so much of the work. I see it as just a magnet for the people that are attracted to this town. And again, it comes down to, who are we? Let's build on what we have, instead of trying to be something that we're not. And I think that's very much is where we could grow and develop by bringing in entrepreneurs.
For sure.
That should be your target of growth, and this broadband's the key to that.
Yeah, well, it's becoming a remote working world.
It is.
And, it's it's why I fought for the school so hard, because people looking for a place to live with their families while they work remotely, schooling is essential. When you bring up a real estate page and you look at a house, the first thing it says is quality of the schools. And, with the new school, we have an exceptional school system anyway, but with the new school, it just really cements it.
There was an article I found in the Bangor Daily, this goes back from end of May, that David Farmer wrote. I don't know if everyone you must know David Farmer. But rural economic growth starts in main cities. And it was just a great, small little opinion piece, and I'll share it with you all. And then there's the Brookings report from 2019. And it shared a lot of information, but I'll just forward that off to you because I think it's a good read. And it's nice to see the governor, at least have a governor right now who gets the broadband or the fiber piece, and that's critical to our rural economy. So,
That'll help us all.
yeah.
When's the next meeting?
I was just looking at it, it's the 24th, oh, wait a minute, today's the 24th. It will be July the 26th.
Mondays are the 22nd, 29th.
Okay, I'm into August, sorry, 22nd.
Yeah, are we the
Yeah, that's
fourth or the last?
We're the fourth.
Okay,
Fourth.
So, yeah, the 22nd,
great.
Yeah.
and I think I'm going to ask that this Connect Over Coffee, we put all of our members on there. I know Steve's on it, I know Robin's on it, I know Meg is on it, I know you're on it.
Yep.
So we aren't missing it, we're only missing a couple of our members. I don't think you are, I don't think
No,
Jeff
I'm
is. And so, we'll put a couple of more of us on there, and then we'll add the select board and and yourself and Audra.
I mean, I get so many emails, I can't keep track anymore, so
You don't think you're on it, or?
I don't think have been on it recently. I originally was on it, but I don't think I've seen
Not
it.
be.
Yeah, I was originally on them too, when I first got there.
Well, we've had a little bit of back and forth over who's getting emails and getting surveys and stuff, and I hope we've cleared that up with them, because there was some talk about moving the date, the day from Wednesday to Friday, and so I think we're getting together.
You've spent, a couple of years now on the first Wednesday. I'd hate to,
Oh, yeah,
once you have something established,
yeah,
why change?
yeah, that was kind of the
Friday's
sense.
is a day when, I go to meetings almost every other day. Friday's just the day when there
Day
are no
off.
meetings. Really would hate to have to start thinking about Friday meetings. That's the one my wife can depend on. Any meetings on Friday?
Yeah, that's important.
I will try to get us all added to that, and, okay, thanks, we'll
Thank
see
you.
you, see you
Again
next
on the
month.
22nd.
22nd,
Yeah.
thank you, thanks for your.
Turn us off?
I'll see you Thursday.